Okay, ready to go, guys? Mm,
Let's do it.
comparatively speaking.
This week is being so slow.
What's that?
This week is being so slow.
It's going so slow. Yeah, tomorrow's Friday though, right? So we'll get a weekend, we'll get to recharge, and next week we'll be energetic. The smoke will be gone, hopefully. Although we could see the sky a little bit yesterday, right? For a few minutes. Did you see some blue sky? Remember that? Remember when the sky used to be blue? Yeah. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Nope. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. We have a few online people here so far. So, Shamimu's here. Good morning to you. And Ayushi's here. Good morning, Ayushi. And Shania's here too. So, good morning to you. I'm sure more people will show up very shortly. Today, what we'll do is we'll very quickly review what we talked about yesterday about Treaty of Versailles. Then we're going to do a little thing on critical thinking, which if you've been in my class before, you've kind of done that. And so I apologize to you for having to listen to it again. But maybe you can help me out, and maybe it'll be a good refresher if it's been a little while since you talked about it. So we'll do a little bit of that. And then I have a little, I guess it could be kind of a debate or an exercise that I want to have on nationalism, but I don't know. We might get to that today, we might not, I'm not sure. But that's kind of what we'll do. But anyway, without further ado, we'll get started. I'll try to make sure I'm centered in my little bubble there. Okay. Is that weird that I'm in a little bubble? No? Okay. Okay. Right. So yesterday we were talking about the end of World War I, right? And we said that basically what was happening was that Germany they could see that they were running out of resources. The Kaiser had abdicated, right? So he stepped down and ran off to Holland or somewhere to retire in comfort and left the German officials with a war that, yeah, they probably couldn't win. And so after some discussion, the newly proclaimed Weimar government, which is kind of a democratic republic, they went to the Allies and said, look, let's time out, let's talk about this, right? And so a ceasefire or an armistice is signed on November 11th of 1918, and then by January of the next year, they are in negotiations. But as we mentioned, even though Germany is very prominently mentioned right on the title page here, Germany actually doesn't get invited to the proceedings. And so there's 32 countries sitting around the table having a discussion about how to end the war in a way that is satisfying to everyone. And actually probably for most of the participants, they're endeavoring to make sure that this thing doesn't happen. Something like this doesn't happen again. Ananda's here too. Good morning, Ananda. So we said even though that 32 countries were there, really only 3 countries are sort of the major players here, and that's the U.S., the UK, and France. And Michaela's here too. Good morning, Michaela. Oh, and someone else is here, and Kevin's here. Morning, Kevin. And again, notably, Germany is not invited, right? Talked about that yesterday. Italy was there as well, but went home. They felt they weren't being taken seriously. They didn't get the sort of territorial concessions that they thought they were promised, and so they kind of went home in a huff. But before Italy goes home, here's our 4 big cheeses of the Treaty of Versailles, right? David Lloyd George, Vittorio Orlando, George Clemenceau, and tall guy, President Woodrow Wilson from the US, right? We said that George Clemenceau from France wanted a punitive, punishing treaty, right? They were very unhappy with the war and what Germany had done, and so they wanted to punish Germany, to strip Germany of their military and their ability to create weapons in the future. Some people even wanted to break Germany up into smaller states. That proposal didn't find its way through. But there were some harsh measures in the treaty for Germany, which we talked about yesterday and we'll talk about really quickly today. We said that David Lloyd George was kind of somewhere in the middle, right? He, at home in Britain, he sort of went along with the chants of punish Germany, make them pay kind of thing. But privately, he worried that a weak Germany would ultimately be, would sort of come back to haunt them. It would be a problem later on. And he was also concerned about a communist revolution. And as we said, Russia just had one in late 1917. And so David Lloyd George was concerned that a weak, economically depressed Germany might turn to communism as well, and then they would have two communist states to deal with. And then, of course, Woodrow Wilson had a different perspective. We read about his 14 points yesterday, and he wanted open diplomacy and freedom of the seas and a redrawn European map along nationalistic lines and no secret alliances. And of course, he supported an economically strong Germany. Right? And the establishment of a League of Nations as well. And so the treaty gets worked out, everyone signs on to it at the end of the negotiations in June of 1919. And Germany signs too, but again, they don't really get a chance to negotiate it, right? It sort of gets plopped on their desk and they're asked to sign the treaty or military action will follow. So they don't really have a choice, and this is just one of the things that makes the German public resentful, right? So again, there's maybe a little more detail than we need here, but Poland is created out of this treaty. Province Alsace-Lorraine goes back to France. Germany loses colonies and land and investments. You can see some numbers there. And they're also forbidden to join. So Germany and Austria are supposed to remain separate. I showed you this yesterday, this sort of redrawn map of Europe as the Austro-Hungarian Empire kind of crumbles, the Ottoman Empire crumbles. A lot of new countries come out of this period, right? Brand new countries. And again, I said that they were supposed to be, the borders were supposed to be created along nationalistic lines, but that kind of doesn't happen. And so there's a lot of people, say in Poland, who are not Polish, they're still Germans because that's kind of where they've always lived. And there are places like Yugoslavia, which is a collection of different ethnicities and religions grouped into one country. And again, that's going to be an issue decades later. But so this kind of attempt to redraw the map according to nationalistic lines, well, it could have been done better, but this is such as it is in 1919. I showed you this really quickly just to show you some of the territory that Germany lost. I want to show you that green part, which is the Rhineland, which is supposed to be demilitarized and under the control of the League of Nations. Spoiler alert, Hitler will move his armies in there in a few decades, and so that's why I mentioned the Rhineland now, because it will come up later. There's that Saarland that you see in the bottom left. That's a very coal-rich region, but of course, all of the coal gets, France gets all of that, and so that economically hurts Germany. There's a bunch of military clauses which basically state that Germany has a very reduced military as to what it had before, no battleships, no planes, and a very small army. That's really all they're allowed to have. Good morning. And then, of course, Germany gets to pay, right? Germany gets the bill for this war. And of course, we said that the war cost far more than this, right? If you added it all up, all the parties spent around $300 billion on this thing. Wait, why were they fighting again? 330 billion? Why? Why was it? Yeah, the ostrich died for nothing. Sorry, online people, you don't get that joke. It's okay. The ostrich died for nothing. Right, so they have to pay this massive bill as well. And then finally, we said that there was this war guilt clause, right? And it indicated that Germany was responsible, right? So there it is. This is the actual text from the actual treaty that says that it's all your fault, Germany. You did this. This is all your responsibility. Bad Germany, right? This is what it is. And of course, German citizens are going to have a pretty strong reaction to this, right? We'll come back to that later. The Americans, of course, we said that Woodrow Wilson had an important role in kind of ending the war. Of course, the U.S. comes in very late, asks people to clarify their war aims, and initially the two sides are thinking, well, our war aims are to win the war, duh. But then they think about it a little more and state some actual goals, right? And Woodrow comes in with 14 very clear points of what he wants to achieve with the war. And again, manages to get those into the treaty. But unfortunately, when he brings it back to the U.S., Congress is less supportive of it than you might imagine. They don't ratify it, so they don't agree to it. And the U.S. is forced to make their own little peace treaty with Germany on the side because the House of Representatives says no to this. And as a bit of a slap in the face to poor Woodrow, the U.S. also doesn't join his League of Nations, right? And that's not going to help the League of Nations as well, the fact that one of the major powerful nations of the world is not part of it, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We said that the Germans, of course, were not happy, right? They were looking for something in line with what Woodrow Wilson had proposed, and again, some of those things made it into the treaty, but there were some pretty harsh punishments, right? Germany lost a lot of land and colonies and money. They had these reparations to pay, and the treaty stated that it was all their fault, and they didn't even get to negotiate it. And I said, keep in mind that the Germans didn't really feel like they lost the war, right? All they said was, okay, let's talk, right? Let's stop shooting at each other for a while and figure it out. Nobody conquered anyone else. No foreign armies rolled into Germany. Nothing, right? They just said, hey, let's talk about it. And so Germany didn't really feel like they had lost the war, but they definitely lost the peace, right? They definitely lost the negotiation here and were required to take responsibility for the whole thing and pay for the whole thing as well. And so I showed you this from a German newspaper the day it was signed. And again, if you read it, there's a little bit of foreshadowing there, right? If you remember from English class, foreshadowing, a little bit of foreshadowing, right? Then will come the vengeance for the shame of 1919. Yeah, but we'll get to that. And again, I've got a lot of text here. Basically what this says is that German citizens felt that not only they were betrayed by all of these other countries, right? They were forced to accept responsibility and pay for this war that they didn't start and that they didn't lose. They also felt that their own government stabbed them in the back. They felt that the Weimar government should have pushed back against the treaty or should have said, no, we're not signing this, forget it, we want to negotiate. But again, the Weimar government simply signed it. And so Germany felt betrayed not only by other European countries, but they also felt betrayed by their own government. And so there's kind of a lot of anger and dissatisfaction in Germany in 1919. And as we'll see a little bit later, that's really only going to get worse, unfortunately. Yeah, that will come later. But it's an important part of the story because, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but you know, one of the questions that people often ask about the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party and the Holocaust and all of the awful things that happened, one of the questions people tend to ask is, how could such a thing happen, right? And so this is an important part of the answer to that question is, how can such a thing happen? And part of it has to do with this country who feels deeply betrayed by other European countries and its own government, and as a result is going to be put in a really difficult situation of economic hardship. But again, we're jumping ahead a little bit, so let's not get too far ahead. Okay, so are we okay with that for the moment? The World War I stuff? Good? Okay, I'm going to time out the World War I stuff and talk about critical thinking. Now again, some of you have heard my little spiel on this before, and if you have, it's okay. I guess you can daydream or, think about other things, or you can help me out, whatever. But here we go. This is an important skill that I think we are supposed to be dealing with in this class, so it's not just me. But it's also an important one for living our lives in general, okay? And how I usually set this up is the idea that the beliefs we have have a significant effect on our lives, right? So who here plans to go to like college or university or some such thing after this? Yeah? Huh? Unfortunately. College, university, some sort of other education of some kind, maybe. Now, why would you do such a thing? Why would you've had 12 years of school, why would you go on and do even more? Isn't 12 enough? Aren't you tired of this? Yeah. Yeah. But you're still going to go on, right? Why, Amanda? Why are you going to go and do more?
The line of work I want to go into requires you to have a degree.
Yeah, so we believe that what you want to do requires a degree. What do you want to do, if you don't mind my asking?
Foreign aid work.
Foreign aid work? Okay, and why do you want to do that? Because you want to?
Yes.
Can I fill in a few blanks for you? Not a few blanks, but can I fill in your answer a little bit? So, would it be fair to say that you have a belief that helping people is a good thing and would bring you satisfaction? And do you also believe perhaps that if you get an education, you will have a better quality of life and you might make more money and you might have more choices in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably fair to say for all of us, right? No matter what kind of education we might want to pursue after this or, what kind of career we might want. I think that's why we go on to more schooling, right? We have this belief that it will make our lives better, that we'll have more options, that we'll get a better job, that we'll make more money, right? And so that belief, the belief in those things actually guides us in our choices, right? You guys are going to invest more years of your life and probably your money or your parents' money in doing this thing, right? And you're going to do that because of what you believe, right? So our beliefs kind of steer us down life's path, right? They help us make the choices that we make. But of course, some beliefs are helpful and useful and correct. Others, not so much. Good morning. Others, not so much. And the tricky thing to figure out is which ones are which, right? Which beliefs are actually useful and helpful and which are not. And so critical thinking is going to ask us to do just that, to think about our beliefs or think about a belief that somebody is trying to give us and allow us to ask the question, should we believe this thing? Is this idea worth believing? And it's kind of an important, whoops, I'm jumping ahead. And it's an important skill for today because like I've mentioned before, increasingly we're living in an age of information, right? And so all of the world's knowledge is available in my cell phone, right? But there's a lot of that knowledge out there that is misleading or wrong or inaccurate, right? And we need the tools to sift through that stuff, right? And figure out what's true and what we should believe. And probably more so than we've ever had to do that. And again, if you're paying any attention to what's going on in the US, you'll see very clear reasons why people need to think critically, right? Because there's a lot of misinformation or disinformation out there. We have a president of the United States who seems very comfortable with outright lies, right? To the world, to his citizens, and shockingly, some people believe him, right? And I think we could probably very easily agree that there are pretty negative consequences to believing the lie, right? To going along with some of the things that he says. And so I would say that critical thinking is more important than it's ever been. Would you agree with that? Or would you? Yeah? Maybe? Kind of? Okay. Here's where we'll start. We can only critically think about claims that people or ourselves make. And so a claim is basically a statement that something is or isn't the case, or something is true or is actual or is not true or not actual. Okay, so we can't really critically evaluate a question, right? And so is there a God? Well, maybe or maybe not, but there's nothing to evaluate there, right? We can only evaluate clear statements like, yes, there is a God, or no, there is no God, or whatever, right? So we can only really evaluate statements like that, okay? And so what we're going to do is take those statements and put them together into an argument, and not a fight kind of argument, right? Not an argument like you have with your friend or your parents or your brothers and sisters, but an argument that tries to convince people of something, right? And again, this is an important skill, again, not only for news. I mean, some of you maybe don't pay attention to the news or maybe just don't want to, but it's still an important skill. It's still an important skill in life. Hey, on the far, over by the wall there, you guys, are you with me? Hello? Are you with me? John, you with me? Okay. So this is an important skill. If you want a raise from your boss, you can't just say, I want a raise because I want more money. We all want more money, but you have to make an argument, right? You have to convince the boss that you deserve more money, right? If you want to go into law, lawyers are making arguments all the time, right? All day long. No, Your Honor, my client did not murder his wife. Here's how we know. And the lawyer is going to make an argument about this, and hopefully it will be believed, right? And that's a pretty important argument, right? It has to do with whether this guy is going to jail or not, right? Academics do this all the time. Every scientific article that you read will be an argument that a scientist is trying to convince his academic colleagues of something, right? I did this experiment, I got this result, this is what I think it means. And so he's going to argue those things, or she's going to argue those things. And so it's an important skill, creating arguments and evaluating arguments, really anywhere, any field you go into, it's going to be useful. Okay, so here's what we'll say an argument is. It's a group of statements, and so statements say that something is or isn't the case, and they kind of work to support one another. And so arguments will generally have a conclusion, a thesis, a thing that they're trying to get you to believe, and then they'll usually have premises, so supporting ideas that give you reasons to believe the conclusion in the first place, okay? And so I'm going to show you a very quick example that has to do with this stuff, because I like it. Tasty. Okay, so as you might already know, or as you might not already know, this is going to be my argument, okay? My argument is going to be that you all should drink coffee, okay? You all students should drink coffee. Obviously, it's an example argument. I'm not asking you to do this. You all should drink coffee, and as good critical thinkers, you should ask me, well, why? Why should I believe that? Because if I just say you all should drink coffee, that's just my opinion, and there's really nothing to work with there, right? There's no reason why you should believe that, right? So you all should drink coffee, and you should ask me, well, why? Give me some reasons to believe that. And so I'll give you 3 premises. I will say that you all should drink coffee, my conclusion, because it is delicious and because it's inexpensive and because it will stimulate your brain and help you study and get better grades. Cool? Cool, cool? Okay. So there I have a very simple argument, okay? You all should drink coffee. It is delicious, it is inexpensive, and it will stimulate your brain, help you study, and get better grades. So this is a very, very simple argument, right? And it's got sort of the important parts. It's got a conclusion, something I want you to believe, and it has some premises. It has some ideas that give you a reason to believe what I'm asking you to believe. Now, before we jump too far and agree or disagree with this, because I'm sure if you're paying attention, your mind is kind of evaluating all of these things and having a bunch of thoughts about them. Let's try and be a little bit systematic, okay? So we're going to try and evaluate this argument according to whether the premises are logically supportive of my conclusion, and then are they true or are they mostly true? Okay, so my conclusion is you all should drink coffee. Let's look at the first one. And one of the reasons why I say so is that it's delicious. Now, let's look at the first one. We have to make sure that premises logically support the conclusion. So if I think you all should drink coffee, is coffee being delicious a reason why you might choose to drink it? Might you drink this thing because it tastes good? Yeah, right? That's a reason why people drink certain drinks, right? Because they like the taste of them, right? So that's a logical reason why someone might drink coffee, right? It's not the only reason. It's not the most important reason. You might not find coffee delicious. There's 100 other things, but again, we're just trying to figure out, is this logical support for my conclusion? And I think it is, right? People choose to drink things because they're delicious. And certainly, people choose not to drink things because they're not delicious, right? True? True? Okay. Let's look at the second one. It is inexpensive. Might someone drink a certain beverage because it's inexpensive? Yeah. Again, it's not the only reason, right? It's not even the most important reason, but people may choose to drink something because it's inexpensive, right? Rose, what do you have there?
The brew, cold brew.
A cold brew, okay, from Starbucks?
That has something inside, so it's different color. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Rose is sitting there, online people you can't see, Rose is sitting there with a cold brew coffee, right? And so if that cold brew cost $40, would you buy it? Would you drink it? No, too expensive. Ever? Would you have one maybe once in a while or never? Never? What if it was $20? Still never? Or maybe once in a while? Maybe once in a while? Maybe. What are they, about $5 or $6? Okay, so they're about $5 or $6 cold brew, $5 or $6. So you'll have one as often as you have them now, right? If they only cost $1, would you have them more? Maybe? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're drinking them all the time and you couldn't have them anymore. I don't know. Either way, the cost of a beverage does influence whether people drink it, right? If that was a $40 cold brew, Rose says, no, too expensive. I'm not buying it, right? So something being inexpensive might be a reason why someone chooses to drink a beverage, right? Again, not the only reason, but is it a logical reason? Is it a reason why someone might choose to drink something? Yeah, I think it is. What about the last one? It'll stimulate your brain and help you study and get better grades. Is that a reason why someone might drink something? If I said, here, drink this and you'll get better grades?
That's for only students.
What's that?
That's only for students.
That's only for students, it's true, but is it a logical support for my conclusion? Yes, it is, right? It's a reason why someone might drink something. Okay, so I have an argument here, and my premises all logically support my conclusion. Now, what if I added a premise? So I've got, you all should drink coffee because it's delicious and it's inexpensive and it will stimulate your brain and help you study. And the beans are grown in Colombia. The beans are grown in Colombia. That's my premise. Now, what I want you to do, of course, is evaluate it the same way. Is that a reason why someone might drink coffee?
I think that depends on the individual.
It does depend on the individual, but in general, probably not, right? Most people don't care where the beans come from. I have some coffee in here. I don't know where the beans come from in this coffee. I know it's Italian coffee, but I don't know if the beans come from there. They could come from anywhere. Honestly, I don't really care that much, right? So the beans being grown from Colombia is probably not a reason that someone would choose to drink it, unless they were Colombian and it was, part of their national pride or something like that, but likely not, right? So it's not really a good premise because it's not a logical support for my conclusion, right? Is it true? Do coffee beans come from Colombia? They do, right? They're definitely grown there. There's lots of coffee that's made from Colombian beans. That is a true statement, but it's not really a logical support for my conclusion, right? So I'm going to get rid of it. It's not helping my argument at all. Okay, let's go to the second part. So I think we've agreed that my three premises are logically supporting my conclusion, but are they true? Or can I prove their truth to you? So let's look at the first one. You should all drink coffee because it's delicious. Is coffee delicious? Aliana says yes. Ahmad says subjective. B was kind of nodding a little bit, maybe. It depends, right? So this is a bit of a personal taste, opinion question about whether coffee is delicious or not. If I wanted to prove to you that coffee is delicious, or at least maybe that most people think coffee is delicious, what could I do? I could do a survey, right? Maybe I could do a Survey Monkey or something like that, and I could send it to this class, or I could send it to Columbia College students, and I could say, hey, I'm doing a little study. Is coffee delicious? Yes or no, right? Or maybe I could do one of those Instagram polls with the yes, no. I could do one of those too and see what people say. So I could do a little survey, I could do a little poll, I could try and collect some data about whether people like coffee or not. What else could I do? Taste test? Okay, so I could bring coffees in here for everyone, right? I could go to Starbucks before this and come with a big vat of coffee and you could all try it. I should have done that. Or I could bring my coffee maker in here and I could make a pot of coffee for all of you and then you could taste it and maybe I could convince you of that. Now, it's very possible that you still might say no, right? And so Adele might drink my coffee and say, no, this is gross. I don't like it, right? And that's possible, right? Because again, it's a personal taste thing. But I could do my survey and let's say I had, 80% of people come back and say, yeah, I think coffee is delicious. Is that good enough for my premise?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's mostly true, right? Again, you'll never find 100% of people that agree on everything. 80% I think would be pretty good, and it would demonstrate that my premise is mostly true, right? Most people like the taste of coffee. Some people don't, but it is mostly true. And I could try to prove that to you somehow. Okay, number 2, it is inexpensive. Is that true? The coffee is inexpensive. Depends on where you're buying it from.
Your income.
Your income, sorry? Depends on the kind of coffee, right? So if you brew it at home, it's much cheaper. If you go to Starbucks and get a cold brew, it's a little more expensive. So there's ways, right? There's some variability in the cost of coffee. But what could I do to convince you of the idea that coffee is not that expensive? What could I do? Okay, I could do the math, right? I could add things. I could figure out how much my coffee costs at home, right? How much a cup of coffee costs when I brew it at home. I could do maybe some internet research, right? I could figure out how much Starbucks costs or charges for coffee, and I could compare it to other drinks, right? A Coke or a bottle of water, or just tap water, which would be almost nothing. But I could do some research, right? I could get some values. Maybe I could make you a nice little bar graph to show you. And maybe I could convince you that coffee is not that expensive, right? And again, it does depend on your income. If you are a millionaire, then, the $2 that a coffee costs is nothing, right? If you are homeless and unemployed, then yeah, that $2 might be expensive. So there's always going to be a little bit of variability, right? But I think we could probably agree, even without the research, coffee's pretty inexpensive, right? More or less. Aliana, what, $2.50 for that one? Yeah, $2.50. That's not really a lot of money for most of us, I think. So I think my second premise is reasonably true. I could do some research and data gathering to maybe prove it to you a little more, but I think we kind of intuitively know that it is not of a ridiculous cost, right? Okay, and the last one, it will stimulate your brain, help you study, and result in better grades. Is that true? Okay, there might be some variability, right? Some people it might work, some people it might not. How could I prove it to you? Science. I could science it. And I could do another survey, okay. I could do an experiment in class, right? I could divide the class in half. Yes, I could use you as guinea pigs, and then I could give you a test and give half of you coffee beforehand and the other half no coffee, and see who scores better, right? Okay, there's some methodology problems with that experiment, but I could do it. What else could I do? What else could I do? Nothing else? What else could I do to prove to you that drinking coffee will help you get better grades? What could I do? If only someone had studied this already. To the internet, right? Scientists have probably done experiments with this, right? They have probably figured out if people who drink coffee or consume caffeine before an exam, do they perform better, right? I'm sure there are studies on this. I could go on the internet, do some research, see if there's some scientists who have figured this out or have done some studies, and then maybe I could present them to you and I could say, look at all these studies that say drinking coffee before an exam helps your performance. I don't know if it does. I'm making this up. It might. I haven't. Well, maybe. I haven't actually done the research. Maybe I should one of these days, but I could look through the scientific literature and I could find that, right? So I could prove to you that that's true as well, right? So,
What if people don't believe in science?
what's that?
What if people don't believe in science?
If people, well, then that's another thing, right? Okay, but we've looked at different ways, right? We've looked at, do the premises logically support the conclusion? And I think we agreed that they did. And are my premises true, or mostly true, or could I prove them to you in some way? And I think we can all agree that, my premises are either true or mostly true, or we could do the research and I could probably prove that to you. So do I have a good argument here? I know it's a simple one, but is this a good argument? Yeah, it's not bad, right? It's properly constructed. All the parts are there. the premises support the conclusion. My premises are probably true, or at least I could prove to you that they're true. But does that mean that you should believe this argument? Have I won? No?
You have to provide the research.
Okay, but let's say I did that. Let's say I did that. Have I won? Should you all drink coffee now? Why not?
Because maybe I just don't want to.
But I won. I made a good argument.
You
It's
won,
not like
but I
a war.
didn't lose.
What?
It's not like a war.
It's not a war. Sometimes it is, not in this case. But Aliana, what did you say?
You won, but I didn't lose.
I won, but you didn't lose?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, because it's yet my wish. I can drink it or not.
Right. So even though someone might make a very valid argument, you still don't have to believe it, right? Or you still don't have to agree. Now, what are some logical reasons why you might disagree with my argument?
Because even though it's valid, I feel like some would also pick or some would also pick tea, because tea is also pretty much healthier than coffee.
Oh, okay. Talk anything about health, right? No. Is it healthy for you to consume coffee? Well, I didn't mention that, right? Some people might say no, right? There's also, you're all young people, right? You're all 17, 18, 19. Your brains are still developing and wiring. Is it a good idea to pump you full of caffeine? Is that good for your brain development? Is that good for your sleep patterns and your general health? Is that good for you? Maybe not. Actually, to be honest, I don't know. The science sometimes is conflicting on coffee. You kind of read things, and one week they say it's great, and the next week they say it's awful, and the science on coffee seems to go back and forth. But my argument doesn't say anything about health at all, right? So you might say, yeah, okay, Mike, you've made a good argument here, and it's well constructed, but you didn't say anything about health. There are negative health consequences, and because of those, I choose not to drink coffee. So maybe I could strengthen my argument by talking about that, right? Maybe I could talk about the health concerns, or maybe, depending on the science, maybe I would say that you all should drink coffee if you're over 19, right? I could change my argument depending on what the science says. But you could dispute my argument because I've missed something, right? I've overlooked an important thing. Health is important to people, right? Ayushi says this here, coffee causes addiction. Some people might be worried that they could become addicted to this substance, and they might not want to be addicted to it. And so that's something that I didn't mention in my argument either. And so some people might say, hey, I don't want to be addicted to this stuff, therefore I'm going to not do it. Even though, Mike, you've made a perfectly logical argument here, but I still disagree with you because I don't want to be addicted to coffee, or I'm concerned about my health and my sleeping patterns. What else? What else have I missed here? Reasons why people might say, yes, you have a valid argument, but I'm still not believing it anyway. I guess, Aliana, you said if they don't believe in science, then that's possible, right? The scientific way in which I'm trying to prove my third premise might not work. If people don't believe in science, then they might not believe that. What else? Why else might people choose not to drink coffee, even though I've made an excellent argument here? Personal preferences. Okay, so personal preferences might just override this. You may really hate the taste of coffee, right? And so you might say to me, Mike, you've made an excellent argument here. It's very logical and it's mostly true. However, every time I take a sip of coffee, I want to throw up. Right? So that would override it, right? You would say, no, I'm not going to drink it, even though this is a perfectly valid argument. What else?
It might be inexpensive to you, but not to me.
Okay, so my first premise might actually be not true to you. It might not be delicious at all. But the second one actually might not be true for you as well, right? Maybe coffee is very expensive for you. And you might say no to that, right? Your financial situation might make the choice for you, right? What about religious restrictions? There are some religions that that state that you may not consume drugs or alcohol, and caffeine is a drug, right? In the West here, it's a socially acceptable drug, and nobody makes a big deal about it, but it still has a drug-like effect on your body, right? A pretty mild one, right? It's not heroin, but still, it is a drug. And so some religions would say, no, you may not consume drugs or alcohol. And so if you belong to a religion like that, you might say, well, okay, Mike, you've made a perfectly valid argument here, and delicious, inexpensive, and better grades are definitely reasons that I might drink something. However, my religion says no. And so I'm going to follow my religious beliefs and I'm not going to drink it, right? So that might cause people to choose or to not agree with me as well, right? So I can make a good argument, but a better argument is one that looks at all of the different criticisms that might be made and tries to address those. But that's kind of next level. That's next level argument stuff. Now we just want to deal with this. But
You also might be allergic to it.
okay, there we go. So an allergy. If you have some sort of allergy to caffeine or to some kind of compound that's in the coffee, yeah, you would also say, Mike, you have a valid argument here, but yeah, every time I drink coffee, I break out in hives or my throat swells up or something, and that would make your decision for you as well, right? You would say no. Okay, so what I want us to do next is I want you to create your own simple argument, but first I think we'll take a little breaky, okay? So take a break, come back in 10 minutes, and then we'll create our own arguments, okay? Okay, so we're back. We were talking about critical thinking and constructing arguments, right? And so I had constructed this very simple argument here that you should all drink coffee because it's delicious and expensive, and if you study, it'll stimulate your brain and help you get better grades. And again, it's not a perfect argument. It's not an argument that everyone might agree with, but I do have 3 premises here that logically support my conclusion. All of my premises are true or mostly true or maybe true for a lot of people. So I have a decent argument here. It's not perfect. It is not, bulletproof, but it's good enough for our purposes. And so what I'd like to ask you to do now is to create your own arguments. And so I'll give you maybe 6 minutes or so, not 5, not 7, but 6. Don't ask me why. I'll give you about 6 minutes or so to come up with your own arguments. And it can be on anything, okay? It can have to do with food or movies or geopolitical events or Marvel characters or music or whatever. Whatever you want to create an argument on, create it. All I want you to do is come up with a conclusion, something that you want people to believe or something that you yourself believe, and then come up with 2 or 3 premises, reasons why people should believe your statement, okay? So take 6 minutes. Online people, you can do this too, and you can type it out in the live chat and share what you come up with, but let's take 6 minutes and we will come up with our own arguments. So let's do it. Okay. So, time's up. Let's see what arguments you can come up with. So, give me an argument, people. Online people, you can type something in too. What do you got? Ahmad, what do you got?
Recycling is good.
Recycling is good. Is a good thing to do?
Everyone should do it. Purpose can save it.
Okay. Everyone, so here's the conclusion. Everyone should recycle. Great. Statement of what everyone should do. Why should we believe that? Why should we recycle?
Well, for starters, it's good for the environment.
Okay, recycling is good for the environment. That's first premise. What else you got?
So it also helps saving natural resources. Like, for example, instead of throwing your plastic bag away, you can recycle it and save yourself some money.
Sure. So recycling preserves natural resources, right? Non-renewable resources. Good. What else?
It helps the economy. So when you pick something and recycle it, it's like you already used it, but you bring it back into the system. So it kind of increases the production as well.
Okay. So it's good, and it's recycling things keeps things in the system and is good for the economy. Okay. So what do you think? We've got a pretty clear conclusion that you should recycle. Why should we believe that? Well, it's good for the environment. Is that a reason why someone might recycle? Yeah. Is it true? Yeah, I think we know it to be true. It's a complicated question, but we know it to be true. Your second one was that it preserves natural resources, non-renewable resources. Is that a reason why someone might recycle? Yeah. Is it true? I think it's true. Yeah. The last one is it's good for the economy. So is that a reason why someone might recycle? Hello? Someone might recycle? Because it's good for the economy? Yeah. Is that true? Is recycling good for the economy? All right. Again, there's probably some science behind some of those, and some people might want you to provide that evidence, and that's okay. But do we have a good argument here? Yeah, good argument. Perfect. Ty's got one here. Ty's got one. Conclusion. Everybody should read. People should read. Okay. Good. Good conclusion. Why should we believe that, Ty? Why should we read? Well, he says that reading builds vocabulary and knowledge, so you can increase your vocabulary and knowledge. Good. Well, it reduces stress and it's relaxing. Okay. And I guess depending on what you read, but it can help you increase your empathy, right? So if you're reading stories about characters, you understand their experiences better, and maybe it helps you understand the feelings and experiences of real people around you. Okay. So we've got a conclusion here that you should all read. Build vocabulary and knowledge. Is that a reason why someone might read? Yeah. Is it true? Yeah. Reading reduces stress and helps you relax. Is that a reason why someone might read? Again, it might differ, but might somebody do something in order to relax? Of course, right? Is it true? Is reading relaxing and stress relieving? I see some people are, the look on their face is kind of like not so much. But for some people it is, right? Some people enjoy reading, it's very relaxing. It also depends on what you read, but I think that's true enough. And increasing empathy, is that a reason why someone might read? Yeah. Is it true? Yeah, I think it's true. It might be a little debatable. Again, it depends on what you read. But if you're reading hate literature, then it won't help with empathy. But I think that's generally true. So do we have a pretty decent argument here? Yeah, it's a good one. Michaela's got one here too. Conclusion, gadgets are bad for children. So I guess we're thinking of like electronics, right? Like phones and tablets and things with screens, right? So Michaela says here, yeah, gadgets are bad for kids. And why should we believe that, Michaela? Well, she says that they are, yeah, so they could, oh, my head is in the way. It could affect their eyesight in a negative way, right? Looking at this bright screen from 2 inches away all the time might be bad for the development of their eyes, okay? And it might negatively affect their brain development as well, right? Okay, so we've got 2 premises here. So kids should not use electronic gadgets, things with screens. Why should we believe that? They could have poor. It could damage their eyesight. Is that a reason why kids should not use these things? Is it true?
Yes.
Probably is. Okay, that's good. Second premise was brain development. If it affected your brain development, would that be a reason why kids should not use these things? Yes. Is it true? Aliana says yes. Ahmad's shaking his head. We might need the science, right? We might need the evidence to back that one up. So if that one were to be true, we can definitely agree that it's a reason why kids should not use it, right? If it affects their brain development, then they should not use these things. Okay, so that's good. And Michaela added a little bit here as well. Oh, and maybe they would rely more on their gadgets. So maybe there's things that they should learn to do on their own or remember on their own, but instead they might, be leaning on the phone or the tablet all the time, right? So is that a reason why kids maybe shouldn't use these things? Because they might come to rely on them? Maybe. I've come to rely on my gadgets here. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but I do need them. So I don't know. That premise might require a little more detail, right? They tend to rely more on their gadgets. So is that true? If you use these things a lot, do you come to rely on them? That is definitely true, right? So definitely kids may rely on these things if they use them a lot. Is that necessarily bad? Maybe, maybe not. We might have to do a little more explaining there. But I think Michaela's got a pretty decent argument here, right? Again, we might want to look at the science. We might want to clarify some of those premises, but those are good. Ayushi says, oh, we should all contribute to funding an animal rescue center. Okay. And so we should ask Ayushi, why should we believe that? Why should we contribute to animal rescue? And Ayushi says here, okay, it prevents animal attacks, and it provides these animals with food and shelter. So for the first premise, is that a reason why someone should donate to an animal rescue center to prevent animal attacks? I think so. Nobody likes to be attacked by animals, do they? Anybody? Not me. I prefer, sign me up for no animal attacks, please. Is that true? Is that true? Okay. So that's good. And then it provides animals with food and shelter. So is that a reason why you might want to donate to an animal rescue? Yeah. And is that true? Does it give them food and shelter? Yeah, it's true, right? So that's good. You could also add in a premise here saying that, helping poor animals is a morally righteous or correct thing to do, right? It is a ethically and morally good thing to help out these poor creatures, right? You could add that in as well. That would definitely be a reason to contribute the money. Is it true? Well, again, it might depend on your personal moral code, but that might be another premise too, is that it's just a morally good thing to do to help these animals, right? So that one's good, Ayushi. Let me see. Let's take one more from the audience here. Let's take one more from the audience. Aliana, what do you got? Yep.
We should all watch Marvel movies rather than DC.
Oh, okay, okay. So this is we should all watch Marvel movies rather than DC superhero movies, right? Or Marvel movies are superior, right? Okay.
It has a wider range of superheroes in the film.
Okay, so the first premise is that there are a wider range in terms of numbers. Okay, there are more superheroes in the Marvel universe as opposed to the DC one. Okay, good.
Marvel has more movies than DC.
Marvel has more movies overall than DC. Good, okay, and
They are more enjoyable than DC.
and they are more enjoyable than the DC ones. Okay.
I have one more.
You have one, oh yeah, okay.
They don't center on only one character like DC did.
Okay. All right, so here we have an argument with 4 premises. The first one was there is a wider range of characters in the Marvel movies than the DC movies, so you should watch the Marvel ones. Is that a reason why someone might watch those movies? Because there's more characters? No, yes? I mean, there might be a greater chance of finding a character that you really like if there's more of them, maybe, right? Is it true that there is a wider range of characters in Marvel? That is definitely true, okay? So the premise is true. Is it a reason why someone might watch these movies? Perhaps. Yes, no. Depend. Maybe that premise just needs a little tweaking, right, to make it more clear, right? To make it more clear support for the conclusion. But that's okay. What was the second one?
It has more movies than DC.
More movies. Okay. So you should watch Marvel rather than DC movies because there's just simply more of them. Is that true? Definitely true. What, 19 movies? 20 movies?
In Marvel, it's 32.
Is it 32?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So many more movies in the Marvel universe than the DC universe. Is that a reason why someone might choose to watch Marvel rather than DC? Yeah? Maybe? Okay. So that one's good. Third one, remind me what it was?
They're more enjoyable.
They're just simply more enjoyable. Is that a reason why someone might watch Marvel movies as opposed to DC? Definitely, right? People watch movies because they're enjoyable. No problem there. That's true. Is it it's logical support for the conclusion. Is it true? Are Marvel movies more enjoyable than DC? I would agree with you. However, However, that's a bit of a personal opinion question as well. And so for that one, we might want some data from you, Aliana. We might want some surveys or maybe some box office records or something like that to convince us that somehow people find Marvel movies more enjoyable than DC, even though I think we all seem to agree that that's the case, right? And then the fourth one.
They don't center on only one character like DC does. I can give you a proof, like Justice League.
Okay, you should all watch Marvel movies because they do not center on one character. It's more of an ensemble kind of movie, usually. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually true, right? There's lots of Avengers and Infinity War, and there's these Endgame, and there's these ensemble movies with lots of characters. Is that a reason why someone should watch Marvel movies rather than DC? What do you think? Should you? I don't know. Let's try and. I feel like it's quiet because we're not sure or it's not good. How could we fix that premise to make it better support for watching Marvel movies? Something to do with more characters versus just one or two. How could we make that more convincing? Okay, how about this? How about this? You should all watch Marvel movies rather than DC. That's the conclusion. And the premise is because the multitude of characters allows for more complex and enjoyable storytelling. What do you think? Okay? Again, it's a little bit debatable, right? Some people might say, no, I want to delve deeply into one particular character. Some people might say that. But that's a reasonably true premise, right? You can make more complicated stories if you have more characters. That's definitely true. So yeah, I think that's good. We could tweak a few of those premises to help them out, but that's a good argument. That's a decent argument. And of course you're right, so that always helps too. Okay, give me one more. One more argument. Amanda, B, you want to help me out? Or Hadil, do you have one? About climate change? Okay, what about it? Okay. Okay. Sorry, say that last one more time.
Get stuff that you don't need. Yeah.
Okay. So for the conclusion for your argument, are you saying that climate change is real and is caused by many factors?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and so we might ask, well, why should we believe that? What are you talking about? And so your first one was that fires actually, I guess, contribute to climate change, but also may be caused by it, right? So those fires might be clear evidence of climate change, right? What was the second thing that you said? Factories are spitting out all kinds of smoke and emissions into the atmosphere, right? Those are contributing to climate change. The third thing you said?
Human activity, using a lot of plastic and get a lot of stuff that you don't need.
Right, so humans create a lot of plastics and compounds that are damaging to the environment, and a lot of those things we don't even need, right? And then there was one last thing you had, I think. That was it? Okay. So we have an argument about climate change and the causes of it, right? And so are all of those things true? Yeah. And are they reasons why climate change exists and is a real thing? Yeah. So do we have a good little argument? Yeah. Okay. Good work. Okay. So I think we've got a good handle on that. I'm just going to move on a little bit here because we've only got a few minutes left. Did I want to do that? Okay. I'll preface this for tomorrow, and then we'll get into it. But tomorrow I want to talk about one of the big ideas in this course, which is the one on the far left. So this idea about nationalist movements can unite people in common causes or lead to intense conflict between different groups. And I want to kind of debate and discuss that with you tomorrow. And so as a bit of a preview, this is kind of what we're talking about when we talk about nationalism, right? Nationalism is, at its core, it's about the nation, right? And a nation will define as a group of people, okay? So not necessarily a country, but a group of people that have something in common. And so it might be their language, it might be their religion, it might be their kind of culture history and where they've come from and the things that have happened to them. It might be their culture or ethnicity. It might be all of those things at the same time. That's often what defines what a nation is. And so it's this kind of cultural community of sort of similar people who also want to have political power, right? They want to make their own decisions and be in charge of themselves, right? Usually nations don't want to be under the control of someone else. They want to govern themselves. And again, this idea of nationalism is behind many of the states that we have today, because even as recently as 100 years ago, that's how we defined where to draw borders, right? So if we're going to create a country, where should we draw the border? Well, we should draw it around the group of people who are the same, right? We should draw a little line, and that's the country of whatever, right? Germany is a country of Germans, right? That's how we've created Germany. We drew a line around all the people who spoke German and had German culture and German ethnicity and, had experienced a history in Germany. That's how we created Germany, right? And other countries as well. And so I want to talk about this tomorrow, but the other thing I want to talk about is patriotism. And patriotism is a little bit different, right? This is the attachment to your political entity. So this is kind of a love of your country. And so do you see how those things are a little bit different? So patriotism is about kind of a devotion or a commitment or an attachment to the political community that you live in. The nation is something different. The nation is a group of people. And so nations can exist within a state, within a country, or they can kind of exist off on their own under the control of someone else. And so nations are about groups of people and about group identity. Patriotism is about the sort of political community that you belong to, okay? But that's what we'll get into tomorrow. So, for those of you who are online, I'm going to sign you off now. Good work with your arguments. That was really good. And I will talk to you tomorrow, and we'll talk about patriotism and nationalism. Yes, so I'm going to let you go. I'll see you tomorrow.